Chad Baldwin. It is April 3rd. It is 2:30 p.m. This is my guest, Grandpa Baldwin. I'm going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
Number one. Was it hard during the war?
Oh, very much at times, yes.
Number two. Was it hard to sleep?
We got very little sleep, especially when the enemy was active and we had to be in combat. It's very difficult to sleep. Noisy.
Were you in the war?
Yeah, in combat you mean?
Yeah.
See, the war covered quite an area, but there were combat areas and non-combat. Most of the time I was in the combat area, except which I'll explain later.
How did it affect you?
Oh, very wearisome. And, of course, during combat where you always run a risk of getting wounded and so on, and it's kind of, dwells on your mind, and anxiety and so on.
What was it like fighting in the war?
What was it like? Well, it's about like, or worse than some of these, because some of these places in the larger cities where you've seen on TV, their riots and so forth, it was similar to that in a way, but then there was with planes sometimes dropping some bombs near us, or artillery fire we had to be careful of, and snipers and so on.
Have you got shot?
Well, it wasn't shot. I was wounded. It was shrapnel, a mortar shell, let close by, and all of the pieces. When that shell explodes, it breaks all the pieces. Well, there was some pieces hit my right arm, and that's the extent of it. But
What years were you in?
well, I was in the Army from 41 to October 45. However, I was over in during the war only about a year and a half, from July 44 to September 45.
What branch were you in?
I was in the infantry. That was we're called foot soldiers. We didn't fly in planes or on a ship or anything. We had to walk most of the time, or we trucked. Sometimes they trucked us around a little.
Where did you serve at?
Well, mostly in France and Germany, because that's where the combat area was that my unit was active in.
What rank were you?
I was a sergeant when I went over, but due to casualties, I was promoted to staff sergeant, which is next higher, and then technical sergeant, which is platoon sergeant. That's the highest rank I attained.
What do you have on the table?
Oh, I have my photo album with a lot of pictures of members of the fellows that were in with me, and places where we were, This is mostly here in the States. This isn't from over there, because we weren't able to take pictures while we were in combat, because that's just impossible when the type of fighting. And then there's also here, I was in the 36th Division, and this book is related to all the activities of the 35th, mostly when we were still in the United States. And have there the Bronze Star Medal, which was awarded to everyone in my unit who had the combat infantry badge. And see it, and there's the letter, or what does it say on that goes along with it. It's it gives my name and so on. And I also have the Purple Heart because I was wounded, and this is the tells on the back of here that I don't have it with me, but there it tells right there that I was awarded the Purple Heart and the Good Conduct Medal and the American Defense and so on. Next question.
What type of medals do you have?
Well, those I just answered that, so we're through with that.
What does the bronze? What is the Bronze Star for?
Well, that signifies that I was in combat, and I was awarded a combat infantry badge because I was an infantryman and was in combat. So that's it.
How do you view the opposite side?
Well, we were trying to do our job to drive back or defeat the enemy in combat, and that we really didn't have much to say about it. You know, we were just doing our job.
Okay. What did you do?
Well, like I told you before, I was in platoon sergeant of heavy weapons or light. Ours was light weapons. They also had heavy, but ours was light weapons. That was a machine gun, 50 caliber machine guns. We had 3, and we had mortars, 3 small 60 millimeter mortar. You know what a mortar is?
No.
You drop the shell in the top. Most of them are from the back. You know, the breech
Yeah.
in. You just drop in the top, shoots out quite a distance, and then explodes. That's the type of weapon we used.
This concludes my... Why did you wear dog tags?
Well, it was for identification. If you get hurt or you wouldn't be able to talk with them, they'd know who you are. So on. That's mainly the reason.
And I see you got one right here.
Yeah. Well, you have. This is mine. Mine's at home. See, it gives my complete name, Floyd B. Baldwin. There is my serial number. We had always had to memorize that 37035103 and so on. This is the year when 1944. There's A. That's my blood type. P is for Protestant religion. So that's really all it tells on us. Now next.
What did it feel like to get wounded?
Well, I got struck in the arm, and then the one above the eye, and so on my face. I didn't realize I was hitting the arm for a while till the blood was running down, and then my arm hurt. So I realized I couldn't carry my rifle, so I was taken on back to see it was a shrapnel in my arm, and there was metal there right at the bone. It didn't break a bone, but it was enough that I had to be hospitalized.
Did you shoot any enemies or see any enemies?
I saw lots of enemies, yeah, but not directly because of my type of a weapon. It shot off in a distance, and there were groups of enemy personnel, yeah, where we hit them. And as far as me personally, but I was just part of a group who fired this weapon.
What country did you get shot in?
Well, I was in France, in eastern France, near the Moselle River. Nancy, France was the name of the city we were close by. Anyway, when I was wounded, I was almost glad I was wounded because I was sent back to England to recuperate. And later on, my unit was in the Battle of the Bulge and it was real cold, and I was glad I wasn't with them. That's why I was fortunate, I thought, to be wounded at that time. So that's why I said I was lucky. Of course, I could have been hurt a lot. Lots of fellows were injured much worse than I was.
When you got shot, did it hurt?
Yes, little. Anytime you get hurt, get injured, it hurts some degree, but not like if a person had get hurt in the stomach or, back or the head. Wasn't so bad, but the arm, any limb where you hurt on your leg or arm isn't quite. It hurts some, but not like an internal injury or something like that. Okay. Anything more you want to ask?
What is in this book?
Well, this is my service album, a lot of photographs of men who were with me, and right in the front here were some of my closest friends who were all from Nebraska, and they were good friends of mine. In fact, one of them here was Emery Pop. He lives here in Beatrice now. He was a good friend of mine there in the war. He was wounded in action. We have here by the side of him here, Emery Guest from Dunbar. He was killed in action. Another one, by the name of Hale, was killed in action. And some more of them here. The Lester Dreesen, he was from Palmyra. He was wounded in action. Here's another one named Bob McNeil from Palmyra. He was a prisoner of war. He was captured there in France. And we have Charles Morrill here from Palmyra, Nebraska. Hugh Hessen from Palmyra, and these were all Gene LaFollette from Syracuse, Nebraska. All that I knew some of them before I went in the Army, and of course knew them better later, being served there with them. And these are a lot of pictures that were taken, like I said before, here while we were here in the United States, because it was very difficult to take pictures over there, and nothing to carry them with you or anything. We just carried what we had on us. So really, is all because we couldn't have any suitcases or anything like that with us. So, now any more questions?
Why did you join the Army?
The main reason I did was to serve. I joined before Pearl Harbor and to serve a year. Well, I was close to, or I was, in draft age, and I was single, and I would have been subject to the draft anyway. So I thought if I got my year served, why then it'd be over with. But it turned out instead of a year, it lasted 4 years and 7 months, 25 days. And I had a longer time to get experienced with military training, while a lot of the fellows who went in were drafted, they didn't get advantage of much training before they had to go into combat, and that was rough on them. So that's about the rate.
What do you mean by the term draft?
Well, when if you're in a certain age, I think it's from 18 on up, you have to register that way then than it is now, and you were in a certain age to be eligible for military service, regardless of Navy, Army, or whatever, and they put you usually whatever they have a need for, and that's why they call it I don't know, conscription. I don't know, just military service is what it is. That's what I meant by draft.
Where were you drafted from?
Well, I was working on a farm near Palmyra, and I was drafted through Odo County Selective Service, and I really, like I said before, I wasn't drafted. I did sign up to go for a year. However, I would have been drafted out of Odo County, but I signed up right through the same Selective Service office to serve for a year. That's turned out to be more than a year.
Did you have any brothers or sons in the military?
We'll have the brothers first. Yes, I had two brothers younger than I. They were drafted, and they went into the Navy, and I forgot how long I think they served until probably the war was over, as I recall. And also later on years, of course, quite a bit later, I had three sons who were in the Navy, or they were in the service. One in the Navy and two in the Army. I think that's right.
When you were in the Army, where did you sleep?
Well, you're probably referring to when we were in combat, but we sometimes we had to sleep in our foxhole down. It's just, Doug, you know how a foxhole is, just a little below the ground, so that you'd be a lot less apt to get hit with any disabling fire, or, enemy fire. And then at times if there wasn't any combat, we could pitch what you call a pup tent, you put two shelter halves, you've seen them, two shelter halves together, and two men could sleep in there if there wasn't any combat right at that time. And other times whenever possible, we were overseas, they would find abandoned houses and buildings that they could put us in temporarily so that we would have some kind of shelter. And that helped a lot.
What was the weather like?
Oh, as I recall, we had very little bad weather while I was in combat. A little rain, but and like I say, I was wounded and was in England during the winter in a hospital, so I didn't suffer the snow and the cold like some of them did, because I wasn't in combat during winter. And it was about the weather about like we have around here. It's nice some and some rainy weather. He's giving you a signal there.
What kind of vehicles did you ride in?
Well, most of the time is this big old truck with the end open, the canvas over the top and back. And like I said before, quite a bit of the time we just had to walk, go from one place to another. And but if they wanted to move us, one night several of us were put on top of a tank. It was during the dark, and they wanted to move us to a certain area. Why, then they had us ride on a tank, and that was really rough riding. They just had to hang on to keep from falling off. And that was the worst ride I ever had, I think. And then before I went overseas, I was a Jeep driver part of the time. You know what a little Jeep is. I drove one of them while we were stationed in California. I enjoyed that.
How much did you get paid?
Well, when I first went in, the first few months, I was $21 per month is all. But then it kept rising some, up to 30, maybe 40, and so on. I think by the time I got out, it was probably around 100, 150 a month, or not more than that. I don't recall exactly, but it wasn't very much compared to nowadays wages.
What did you eat during the war?
Well, it was always, most of the time it was dry rations, sea rations and canned things, and well, we had enough to eat, but it wasn't the best.
Do you think the United States was a different country after the war than it was before?
Well, I hope all these wars have done some good to make it a different country. Yeah, I think so.
What changes did you notice?
The changes? Well, I think it showed how patriotic people were. You know, they all. You're referring mainly to World War II, I think, because the people all did everything they could to help the war effort. You know, collected material, scrap for to make all the needed armament that was necessary.
Were you ever a part in any major battles?
The main battle that I took part in was the Battle of St. Lo, which is just not far from the Normandy invasion location, Omaha Beach, and through there. St. Lo was a big battle that got the enemy, the German forces, to retreating from there on. We just more or less chasing them, and that was the major battle I was in.
Where did you go to basic training?
My basic training was at Little Rock, Arkansas, Camp Robinson, and that was for about 10 months. And right after December 7th, Pearl Harbor, we were sent to California, and we spent 2.5 years over California on coastal defense.
Would you like to add anything about this speech?
Well, this speech, this is merely explaining some of my experiences. I wouldn't call it a speech, Chad, but I just hope that you or the other young people don't have to go through what we did.
Okay. This is Chad Baldwin concluding this interview with my grandpa, Floyd Baldwin.